halfway through our galentine sleepover at Sophie's, laughing at Maya's impression of her Hinge date, when my phone lit up. It was my best friend Chloe. "So, I saw you posted that you're wearing the blue dress to my birthday brunch tomorrow? Yeah, we need to talk about that." The room got quiet. Sophie stopped mid-stroke on Jess's pinky nail. "Okay, I'm not trying to be a bitch, but when you wear it, you looked like a stuffed sausage. It's really embarrassing." She paused to examine her lashes. "Remember Brad's pool party when you wore that bikini and I told you everyone was judging you? This is gonna be worse. I'm just being honest because I love you." Click. She hung up before I could even process. Everyone was staring at me. 20 seconds of pure silence while my face filled with heat, and I tried not to cry. "Guys, she didn't mean it like that. She's just an honest person." "Oh, hell nah." Maya actually threw her nail polish bottle onto the couch. "Did that hoe just call you a stuffed sausage?" The girl from Sophie's work who I just met tonight said, "Girl, what the actual fuck?" Maya was already scrolling through Chloe's Instagram. "This beach." Maya held up her phone. "She literally posted about body positivity yesterday." Wait, Sophie said. "Isn't her birthday brunch at that bougie place downtown? The one where all the influencers go?" I nodded, still trying to stop crying. Jess, who never swears, said, "Fuck this. Girls, new plan." The energy shift was instant. Suddenly, everyone was huddled around me like we were planning a heist. Sophie pulled up the Revolve website. "What dress is it?" I showed them. The blue midi with the cutout back. "Okay, it's in stock," Sophie said, adding it to her cart. "What size?" Within 5 minutes, every single girl had ordered the same dress in their size. Overnight shipping. Still, I defended her, blissfully unaware of what a good friend is meant to look like. "But guys, this isn't necessary. It's just the way she is." "Girl, I love you, but you need to shut the fuck up because this is happening," Maya said, still furiously scrolling through Chloe's socials. "Oh, this is gold. She told everyone she's 24 tomorrow. This betch is turning 27. How do you know?" I asked, pretending to be surprised. "Because I found her college graduation photos from 2020. Do the math. By 3 a.m., they'd found her real age, her actual job, MLM, her Facetune fails, and the fact that she'd been telling people she got into Cornell when she went to community college. Nothing wrong with that, but lying. Guys, is this too mean? I don't want her to be sad on her birthday." "Girl, we're giving her exactly what she wants," Maya said with a smirk. "She wants all the attention in her dress? Well, she'll be the only one not in blue and get all the attention she wants." Even I couldn't argue with that. Like, she kinda ate. The next morning, my friends wouldn't let me check my phone. They did my makeup, hyped me up, and we all got dressed together. 6 girls in almost identical maxi dresses. "Girl, the body is bodying!" Sophie exclaimed. "8 down!" Maya yelled, cheekily slapping my ass. It was the first time girls had hyped me up like that, and I couldn't even hide my smile. We rolled up to the restaurant together. I could see Chloe through the window at a long table, wearing black, surrounded by her sorority sisters. She saw us approaching, and her face went through like 5 different expressions. "Happy birthday, babe!" Maya said way too loudly as we walked in. "Happy 27th!" The table went silent. One of her sorority sisters said, "Wait, I thought you were turning 24. We all loved this dress so much after you said how good at photographs," I added, finding my voice. We sat down, 6 blue dresses, Chloe in black, looking like she was at a funeral, which I guess she was, the funeral of her fake persona, LOL. Her sorority sisters were exchanging looks. One pulled out her phone, probably checking Chloe's LinkedIn. Throughout brunch, my friends kept aggressively complimenting each other. Chloe tried to pull me aside for a bathroom talk, and for the first time ever, I told her no. No over-explaining, no apologizing, just simple refusal. The birthday toast was brutal. Someone definitely took photos that ended up in the sorority group chat. As we were leaving, I did something I never thought I'd do. I texted her mom. "Hi, Mrs. H. I won't be around anymore. Something happened with Chloe, and I can't continue the friendship. You've been like a second mom to me. Love you always." She read it immediately. My phone started blowing up. 47 missed calls from Chloe, 23 from Mrs. Healer. Except that wasn't even the worst part, because right as we were leaving the restaurant, Lauren Price grabbed my arm and pulled me to the side near the hostess stand while everyone else was getting their coats. She looked around to make sure nobody could hear us, then leaned in close enough that I could smell her vanilla perfume. Her eyes kept darting between me and the table where Chloe was still sitting, surrounded by confused sorority sisters, all checking their phones and whispering. Lauren asked if Chloe was really 27, and I just nodded because what else could I do at that point? She told me they'd been celebrating her 24th birthday for 3 years straight, and everyone thought she was the baby of their friend group. The other girls from the sorority were now openly staring at Chloe, who was trying to laugh it off, but her face kept twitching, and her hands were shaking as she reached for her mimosa. My phone started buzzing nonstop in my purse, and when I pulled it out, the screen was already full of notifications with more coming in every second. 47 missed calls from Chloe and 23 from Mrs. Healer, plus dozens of texts that ranged from calling me every name in the book to begging me to answer and explain what was happening. Maya grabbed my phone out of my hand and started blocking numbers while Sophie called an Uber, and Jess stood between me and the restaurant window, where Chloe was now standing and staring at us. We piled into the Uber and headed straight back to Sophie's apartment, where I completely lost it the second we got through the door. I collapsed on her couch, still wearing that blue dress, and just sobbed while my friends sat around me telling me over and over that I hadn't done anything wrong. They started listing all the times Chloe had torn me down while pretending to help, like when she told me my interview outfit made me look desperate, or when she said my graduation photos were embarrassing and I should delete them. Sophie pulled out her laptop and said we needed to document everything before Chloe could spin the story her way, so we spent the next 3 hours screenshotting every mean text she'd sent me, next to her fake inspirational posts about lifting other women up. Maya found Chloe's LinkedIn, where she claimed to be a marketing executive at some Fortune 500 company, when really she was selling essential oils through an MLM and had been lying about her job for years. We found old Facebook posts where she'd claimed different ages on different birthdays, and Sophie even found a post from her community college congratulating their graduates, which proved she'd never gone to Cornell like she told everyone. My hands were still shaking as I watched them compile this folder of evidence showing that basically everything about Chloe was fake, from her age to her job to her entire personality. That evening around 7, we heard pounding on Sophie's apartment door, and through the peephole I could see Chloe with mascara streaking down her face and her designer dress all wrinkled from the brunch disaster. She was screaming about how we'd humiliated her on her birthday and threatening to sue us for defamation, while Sophie called building security and Maya filmed everything through the window. Security showed up within minutes and escorted her out while she kept yelling that she'd destroy all of us and make sure everyone knew what horrible people we were. The next morning I woke up on Sophie's couch to find that Chloe had posted this long, tearful Instagram story about being bullied by jealous friends who couldn't handle her success and tried to ruin her birthday out of spite. Half the comments were people offering sympathy, but the other half were asking why 6 different friends would coordinate matching dresses if they weren't making a point about something. Lauren had sent me a DM asking if we could meet for coffee because there was stuff about Chloe I needed to know, so I met her downtown at this little place near the university. She pulled out her phone and showed me old Facebook posts from when they were in college together, and apparently Chloe had done this exact same thing to her freshman roommate. The girl had been shy and insecure, and Chloe became her best friend, then slowly broke her down by constantly criticizing her weight and clothes and grades until the girl literally transferred schools to get away from her. Lauren showed me message after message where the pattern was exactly the same as what she'd done to me, down to the fake compliments followed by cruel observations disguised as honesty. I sat there in that coffee shop realizing I'd been apologizing for my own existence for 7 years because Chloe had trained me to think I was never good enough without her approval. Every outfit I bought, I'd send her photos first, and every decision I made, I'd run by her because she'd convinced me I couldn't trust my own judgment about anything. Maya kept texting me to stop spiraling and reminding me I was free now, but freedom felt terrifying when someone else had been controlling your choices for so long. That's when Mrs. Healer called Maya's phone since I'd blocked hers, and Maya put it on speaker, while Mrs. Healer sobbed about how I was like a daughter to her, and begged me to talk to her. 6 matching blue dresses walking into brunch like a fashion flash mob? That's not revenge, that's performance art with a side of mimosas. Chloe wanted attention, and boy did she get it, just not the kind where people believe you're 24 for the 3rd year running. I finally took the phone and told her it wasn't just one fight, and she should ask Chloe about Cornell and her real job, and why she'd been lying about her age to everyone. The silence stretched for what felt like forever before Mrs. Healer whispered, asking what I meant, so I told her to check Chloe's community college graduation photos and her MLM website, and then call me back if she still thought I was the problem. 3 days later, I went back to work trying to focus on spreadsheets while my whole personal life was falling apart, and coworkers who followed Chloe kept asking if I was okay because of her Instagram stories. My supervisor noticed I was distracted and suggested I take a mental health day, which made me realize just how much Chloe had invaded every single part of my life, to the point where I couldn't even do my job without thinking about her. My phone buzzed on my desk and I saw Brad Mitchell's name pop up on Instagram, which was weird since we hadn't talked since college. His message made my stomach drop because he said he saw what happened at the brunch, and that Chloe had done the exact same thing to his ex-girlfriend until she developed an eating disorder. The screenshots he sent showed Chloe telling this girl she looked pregnant in every outfit and that she should try intermittent fasting because her arms were getting flabby. I scrolled through dozens of messages where Chloe systematically destroyed this girl's confidence with comments about her thighs touching and her face looking puffy. My hands were shaking as I read message after message of Chloe pretending to care while actually tearing this girl apart. Before I could even process what Brad sent, my phone exploded with notifications because Chloe had just posted on Instagram and tagged all 6 of us from the brunch. The post had this long caption about fake friends showing their true colors and how she was planning to ask me to be her maid of honor, but now she dodged a bullet. She attached all these photos from our friendship, but carefully picked ones where she looked amazing and I looked tired or awkward. The comments were already piling up with people taking her side and calling us mean girls and bullies. My coworkers kept looking at me because my phone wouldn't stop buzzing with notifications from people I hadn't talked to in years asking if I was okay. Maya texted our group chat saying we needed to meet at her apartment immediately because this was getting out of control. I left work early and drove to Maya's place where everyone was already gathered around her kitchen table with their phones out. Maya had created a new group chat called Chloe Survival Squad and was taking charge of the situation like a general planning a battle. Sophie's friend from work, who I'd just met at Galentine's, told us about her sister, who had a friend exactly like Chloe, and warned us it would get worse before it got better. We spent hours going through all our old messages and screenshots, building a timeline of Chloe's lies and manipulation. A week passed and I couldn't stop myself from checking Chloe's Instagram every few hours, watching her craft this victim narrative. She posted old photos of us with captions about mourning the friendship she thought was real, and each post felt like a knife twisting deeper. Jess kept texting me to stop looking at Chloe's posts because I was just torturing myself, but I couldn't help it. Then Lauren from the sorority sent me a whole folder of screenshots from their group chat where Chloe had been lying about literally everything. She told them her dad was a federal judge when he actually manages a Subway franchise, and claimed she went to Cornell when it was community college. The lies were so extensive and so unnecessary that it was almost impressive how she kept track of them all. I tried going back to my normal routine, but everywhere I went reminded me of Chloe. Her favorite coffee shop where she'd tell me my order had too many calories, the boutique where she convinced me nothing looked flattering on me, the park where she'd give me advice about my problem areas. The whole city felt haunted by memories of her criticizing me while pretending to help. 10 days after the brunch, I was home making dinner when someone knocked on my door, and I opened it to find Mrs. Healer standing there looking completely wrecked. She was holding a folder and her eyes were red from crying as she told me she found Chloe's real transcripts from community college. She broke down sobbing on my doorstep, saying she didn't know her own daughter and apologizing for all the manipulation. I brought her inside and made her tea while she told me how Chloe had been using her credit cards for all those designer clothes. Mrs. Healer thought they were gifts from Chloe's executive position, but the MLM had actually put her $30,000 in debt. She kept saying Chloe told her I was jealous of her success, and she believed it, which made her feel terrible now. I showed Mrs. Healer all the screenshots on my phone, the body-shaming messages, and the gaslighting, and the systematic destruction of my confidence. Her face crumbled more with each message she read, and she kept shaking her head in disbelief. She said this wasn't the daughter she raised, but I wondered if maybe it was because Chloe had learned that love comes with conditions, and image matters more than truth. While we were sitting there, someone leaked the sorority group chat screenshots on Twitter with a thread titled, "My friend's toxic bestie got exposed at her birthday brunch." The thread went viral within hours, and my phone flooded with messages from mutual friends asking if this was about Chloe. People were quote tweeting with their own stories about toxic friends, and the whole thing exploded beyond anything we could have imagined. 2 weeks later, I sat in my car after work staring at the steering wheel because every single route home went past something Chloe related. The coffee shop where we'd meet every Tuesday, the boutique where she'd convinced me that dress made me look fat, the park where we'd planned her fake Cornell graduation party. The radio started playing that Taylor Swift song we used to scream together, and I jabbed the power button so hard it hurt my finger. I sat there in the parking garage for 45 minutes just breathing and wondering if this sick feeling in my stomach would ever go away. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number saying she was Brad's ex, Emma, and needed to warn me about something important. I met her 3 days later at this little restaurant downtown where she immediately grabbed my hands across the table and told me Chloe doesn't just let people go. Emma's eyes kept darting to the door like she expected Chloe to walk in any second while she explained how when she'd tried to distance herself 2 years ago, Chloe had called her job claiming she was stealing, contacted her parents saying she was on drugs, even made fake dating profiles with her photos. Emma showed me screenshots she'd saved, messages to her boss saying Emma was mentally unstable, emails to her landlord claiming she was running a brothel, all sent from different fake accounts, but with Chloe's writing style obvious in everyone. The next morning, my boss called me into his office and showed me an Instagram message from an account called Concerned Citizen 847, claiming I was mentally unstable and dangerous to work colleagues. My hands started shaking as I read accusations about me having violent episodes and making threats, complete with fake screenshots of messages I'd never sent. My boss pushed a box of tissues across his desk and said he knew it was harassment, but I needed to document everything for HR and probably the police. Maya found out that same afternoon because she'd been monitoring any new accounts that followed both me and Chloe, and she immediately started investigating. Within 2 hours, she'd discovered Chloe had been messaging my ex-boyfriends with this fake story about planning a surprise party for me and needing embarrassing stories for a roast. She forwarded me screenshots from my ex James, who'd immediately blocked her, but 2 others had already sent stories before realizing something felt off about her questions. One had told her about the time I cried during sex because I was so insecure about my body, which was exactly the kind of ammunition Chloe wanted. 3 weeks after the brunch, I finally made an appointment with a therapist because Sophie literally drove me there and walked me into the building. I sat on that beige couch clutching a throw pillow and admitted I didn't know who I was without Chloe telling me that for 7 years she'd been the voice in my head deciding if I was pretty enough, smart enough, good enough for anything. The therapist nodded like she'd heard this exact story before and said I'd been in an emotionally abusive friendship, that recovery takes time, that the confusion and grief I felt were normal responses to psychological manipulation. The word abuse felt too big and dramatic for what happened, but when she listed the signs, control, isolation, gaslighting, emotional manipulation, I checked every single box. Meanwhile, Lauren from Chloe's sorority had been getting suspicious about all the stories not adding up and organized a meeting at her apartment with 5 other sisters. They sat around her living room comparing notes and realized Chloe had been collecting dirt on everyone for years, keeping files she called insurance for when she might need leverage. This girl Stephanie pulled up her laptop and showed them a folder Chloe had accidentally shared with her during a group project that contained documents on dozens of people with their secrets, fears, embarrassing stories, anything that could be used against them. Lauren immediately took photos of everything and started a group chat to warn anyone who might be targeted. I found out about the meeting because Lauren called me that night saying I needed to know Chloe had a file on me that went back to freshman year with every insecurity I'd ever mentioned, every embarrassing moment, every vulnerability carefully documented with dates and details. Brad sliding into the DMs with receipts about Chloe's past victims. Talk about the universe delivering evidence right to your inbox. Turns out she's been running this same mean girl playbook since before smartphones had portrait mode. By now, I'd completely changed my daily routine to avoid any chance of running into Chloe, taking a different route to work that added 20 minutes, switching to a gym across town, even grocery shopping at weird hours. Sophie noticed I was basically living in fear and said I was letting her win by hiding, but it didn't feel like hiding. It felt like the only way to breathe without that constant anxiety that she might appear. 4 weeks after the brunch, a courier showed up at my apartment with an envelope that made my stomach drop before I even opened it. Inside was a formal cease and desist letter from a law firm claiming defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and interference with business relationships, demanding I stop spreading false information about Chloe or face legal action. My hands shook so bad I could barely dial Maya's number, but she came over with her brother who worked as a paralegal, and he read through it laughing, saying it was intimidation bullshit because truth is an absolute defense against defamation, and we had screenshots of everything. He helped me organize all the evidence into a folder, while explaining that Chloe's lawyer probably told her this wouldn't go anywhere, but she did it anyway, just to scare me. That same week, Mrs. Healer texted me a long message saying she'd cut off Chloe's credit cards and demanded she get real professional help after seeing the Twitter thread and talking to other parents who'd reached out with concerns. Chloe's response was to post on Facebook that her mother was having a mental health crisis and trying to control her her adult daughter's life through financial abuse. The comments section turned into a war zone with people calling Mrs. Healer toxic and telling Chloe to go no contact with her abusive family, while others who knew the real story tried to defend her, but got attacked by Chloe's remaining supporters. Mrs. Healer sent me screenshots of Chloe's posts with crying emojis and said she didn't recognize her own daughter anymore. Jess sent me this quote that night that said, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time," and I realized I was grieving someone who never actually existed. The Chloe I loved, the one who made me laugh until my stomach hurt and stayed up all night when I was sad and made me feel special, that was just a performance to keep me close enough to control. The real Chloe was the one who needed me small and insecure to feel big, who collected my pain like weapons, who saw friendship as a game where someone had to lose for her to win. Sophie's boyfriend Jake showed up at my place 3 days later with his laptop and some cable thing I didn't recognize. He plugged my old phone into his computer and started typing really fast while Sophie made us tea. The screen filled with rows and rows of text messages I thought I'd deleted forever. Years of conversations with Chloe appeared on his screen like ghosts coming back to haunt me. Jake pointed at different sections while Sophie took notes on her phone. The messages showed this weird pattern where Chloe would be super sweet for weeks, then suddenly turn mean, then disappear, then come back acting like nothing happened. Jake kept saying words like textbook and psychology paper while highlighting different parts. Sophie counted over 40 times where Chloe had called me fat or ugly, then immediately said she was just trying to help. 6 weeks after the birthday brunch disaster, I was pushing my cart through Target looking for laundry detergent when someone tapped my shoulder. This girl with dark hair and tired eyes was staring at me like she'd seen a ghost. She said her name was Ashley, and she'd been Chloe's college roommate. She recognized me from old Facebook photos Chloe used to post. Ashley grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the coffee shop area. She kept looking around like Chloe might pop out from behind the paper towel display. Ashley showed me screenshots on her phone from 2019 when Chloe had done the exact same stuff to her. The messages looked exactly like mine, even using the same phrases about being honest and helping. We sat there for an hour comparing stories, and it was scary how similar everything was. Ashley gave me her number and said to call if I needed someone who understood. 2 days later, I was eating my sad desk salad when the receptionist called saying I had a visitor. Chloe was standing in the lobby wearing this huge coat and sunglasses like she was some kind of celebrity. She started yelling about needing to talk like adults while everyone in the lobby stared. The security guard had to physically block her from getting to the elevators. She kept screaming my name and saying I was being dramatic while the guard called for backup. My boss watched the whole thing from the second floor balcony and pulled me into her office after. She handed me a business card for the police station and said the word nobody wants to hear: stalking. The next morning, I sat in a gray room at the police station filling out forms while an officer typed my answers into her computer. She looked exhausted but kept nodding and asking for more details about everything that had happened. I showed her the birthday brunch texts, told her about the lobby scene, and mentioned the time Chloe showed up at my apartment. The officer printed out more forms and had me sign them while explaining the next steps. She said my case was actually pretty strong compared to most she sees. After that, every notification on my phone made my heart race. Unknown numbers calling sent me into panic mode. Random knocks on my door had me hiding in my bedroom. Maya started sleeping on my couch because I kept having nightmares about Chloe breaking in. My therapist said something about PTSD from friendship trauma being real and valid. She prescribed me anxiety meds and suggested I change my locks. 2 months after the brunch, I got the official paper saying the restraining order was approved. Chloe had to stay 500 feet away and couldn't contact me through other people either. Within hours, she was posting on Instagram about false accusations and legal harassment. Lauren sent me screenshots showing Chloe's follower count dropping by the hundreds every day. Her sorority sisters were unfollowing her, and even some family members were going quiet. I started going to the support group that met in a church basement on Wednesdays. There were people there who'd been abused by romantic partners, family members, and even friends like me. The facilitator kept talking about power and control being the real issue, not the type of relationship. Hearing other people's stories made me realize how common this stuff actually was. Then Emma, Brad's ex-girlfriend, posted this TikTok that completely blew up. 2 million views in 2 days of her explaining everything Chloe had done to break them up. She had receipts showing how Chloe convinced her she was too fat for Brad while pretending to be supportive. The comments section turned into this massive thread of other people sharing their Chloe stories. Lauren called me at midnight completely freaking out about something she'd found. She'd been going through old messages and found these weird comments from Chloe about keeping records. Turns out Chloe had been secretly recording our conversations for years as insurance. Lauren found references in texts from 2021 where Chloe literally wrote about having dirt on everyone. The paranoia hit immediately because I'd told Chloe everything over the years. Every secret, every embarrassing story, every private thought was potentially recorded somewhere. Mrs. Healer texted me again saying she needed to talk and she was so sorry about everything. She'd started therapy to understand how she'd missed all the warning signs about her daughter. She kept saying she'd enabled Chloe by always making excuses and giving her money. She'd even joined some support group for parents of kids with personality disorders. 10 weeks after the brunch, I was at Maya's place making tacos when I realized I hadn't checked Chloe's Instagram in 3 whole days. Sophie noticed me actually laughing at something stupid on TV instead of doom scrolling my phone. My therapist had been telling me recovery wasn't a straight line, but this felt like real progress, even if it only lasted that one afternoon. Ashley reached out through Facebook saying she and Emma wanted to meet up with all of us about Chloe stuff. We gathered at Maya's apartment the next Saturday, 7 women total who'd all been friends with Chloe at different times. Ashley told us about her freshman year roommate experience with Chloe, how she'd started out being her best friend, then slowly got isolated from everyone else. Emma talked about dating Brad after Chloe and finding out all these lies Chloe had told him about her. Each story followed the same pattern of love bombing at first, then getting cut off from other friends, then constant criticism, then being dropped when when they stopped being useful. We weren't victims, though. We decided right there in Maya's living room we were survivors who'd gotten out. Later that week, I was cleaning out my phone photos when I found hundreds from when Chloe and I first became friends. Her smile looked different in those old pictures, more calculated than warm, like she was always performing instead of actually being happy. The memories felt contaminated now, like finding out your favorite childhood movie was made by someone terrible. I was at work when my coworker knocked on my door holding a thick envelope that someone had left at reception for me. The return address was some girl from high school I barely remembered, but inside was 10 pages of Chloe's handwriting. She wrote that she was sorry I misunderstood her love, that she only wanted to help me improve, that I'd destroyed her life over petty jealousy. I drove straight to the police station and filed a report for violating the restraining order. Chloe's handwriting showing up through a high school acquaintance like some kind of friendship horror movie plot twist. The restraining order says 500 feet, not 500 creative loopholes through random messengers from 10th grade chemistry class. The detective said using a third party to deliver messages still counted as contact. 3 months after the brunch, I got a call from the county prosecutor's office saying they were charging Chloe with harassment and restraining order violation. It was just a misdemeanor, but at least it was something official. She'd have to appear in court and everything was finally on record. Sophie, Maya, Jess, and I started having dinner every Wednesday at someone's apartment, calling them our healing hangs. We had one rule that nobody talked about Chloe unless someone really needed to vent about something specific. We cooked together, watched trashy reality shows, and I started learning what actual supportive friendship looked like without constant criticism. Lauren called me freaking out because she'd found something on Chloe's old laptop that she'd left at their apartment. It was a Google Doc titled Insurance, with dirt on literally everyone Chloe knew, organized by how useful they were to her. My section was 3 pages long with notes like weight fluctuates so insecure about it, daddy issues make her need validation, people pleaser so easy to manipulate. Lauren sent screenshots to everyone mentioned in the document. I went on my first date since everything happened, just coffee with a guy from my gym. He complimented my dress and I spent 10 minutes analyzing whether it was genuine or love bombing. Maya had to remind me that normal people give compliments without ulterior motives, and that Chloe had trained me to distrust my own judgment. 4 months after the brunch, the court date finally arrived. Chloe showed up in this conservative suit trying to look like a victim, while her lawyer argued I'd orchestrated a harassment campaign against her. My lawyer presented all the evidence, including the letter she'd sent through the third party and the recordings of her calling me repeatedly. The judge kept interrupting Chloe's lawyer to ask for actual evidence of harassment from my side. During the recess, I went to the bathroom and Chloe followed me in, even though her lawyer had specifically told her not to approach me. She cornered me by the sink saying I'd ruined everything. Her mom, her friends, her reputation, all because she told me the truth about that dress. Her mask had completely dropped and she looked actually unhinged, so I started recording on my phone while she kept ranting about how I was jealous and pathetic. She was still going when the bailiff knocked on the door saying court was back in session, and I quickly stopped recording and slipped my phone into my pocket while Chloe fixed her makeup like nothing happened. Back in the courtroom, my lawyer asked if I was okay, and I just nodded, but then pulled out my phone and showed her the recording and her eyes went wide. She immediately asked to approach the bench and played it for the judge while Chloe's lawyer objected, saying it wasn't admissible, but the judge cut him off saying we were in a one-party consent state. The judge's face got harder and harder as she listened, and when it finished, she looked straight at Chloe and said, "Miss Healer, you were explicitly told not to approach the plaintiff." Chloe tried to explain that I'd followed her into the bathroom, but the recording clearly showed her voice getting closer to me, not the other way around, and she just kept digging herself deeper, saying I'd provoked her by showing up to court. The judge ruled right there, extending the restraining order to 2 years with criminal penalties if violated, plus 40 hours of community service and mandatory therapy for Chloe, who stormed out while her lawyer stayed behind, apologizing to mine, saying he didn't know what he was dealing with. The victory felt empty though, because even winning legally didn't fix what was broken inside me, and I could still feel Chloe's influence in every moment of self-doubt and every time I looked in the mirror. My therapist kept saying healing isn't about forgetting, it's about reclaiming your narrative, but that felt impossible when Chloe had rewritten my entire sense of self for years. 5 months after the brunch, Mrs. Healer sent me a handwritten letter saying she'd been going to therapy and CODA meetings, learning about enabling, and how she'd failed both of us by teaching Chloe that image mattered more than integrity. The survivor support group we'd started created a private Facebook page, and more women kept joining with stories about Chloe going back to high school, showing this pattern had been happening for over a decade. Ashley found Chloe on TikTok under a fake name, calling herself a survivor of mean girl bullying, and giving advice about toxic friendships, literally making money off being the victim of her own behavior. I wrote Chloe a letter I'd never send, just pages of anger and hurt, saying things like, "You made me hate myself so you could feel superior," and my therapist had me burn it in a ceremony with Maya and Sophie, watching the smoke rise and feeling something release. 6 months after the brunch, my life had new rhythms with Saturday brunches, with real friends, and therapy on Wednesdays, and support group on Thursdays, rebuilding from scratch, but on a solid foundation this time. Lauren discovered Chloe had moved to Dallas, telling people she was escaping stalkers from Austin, and had already found a new friend group posting about finding her tribe and leaving toxicity behind, starting the whole cycle over with new victims. Then one of Chloe's new Dallas friends messaged me after finding the viral TikTok asking if this was about Chloe Healer, because she was her new roommate, and something felt off, and I sat there staring at the message, not knowing if I should warn her and risk looking like the stalker Chloe described, or stay quiet and let another woman go through what I did. My hands shook as I typed and deleted 10 different responses before finally calling my therapist for an emergency session. She listened to me explain the situation while I paced around my apartment, then suggested I talk to my lawyer before responding to anyone. The lawyer's advice was simple but frustrating. I could only share facts without details details. Nothing that could be seen as harassment or defamation. After 3 hours of drafting, I sent back a careful message saying I couldn't discuss specifics for legal reasons, but to trust her gut if something felt wrong. The Dallas friend replied within minutes saying Chloe had already started telling her she looked fat in certain outfits, but it was just tough love. My stomach dropped reading those words because I recognized the exact pattern starting all over again. That night I couldn't sleep, realizing this would be my life now. Watching Chloe find new victims from far away, legally unable to warn them properly, seeing the same cycle repeat while I stayed silent. It was like being forced to watch someone drown while your hands were tied behind your back. 7 months after the birthday brunch, my therapist introduced something called EMDR therapy for processing the trauma. I sat in her office following a light bar back and forth with my eyes while thinking about specific memories with Chloe. It sounded completely ridiculous, but after 3 sessions, something shifted inside my brain. The memories were still there, but they didn't make my heart race anymore. They became just facts, like remembering what I had for breakfast last week instead of reliving a nightmare. The Dallas friend texted me again 2 weeks later with photos attached. Chloe was wearing her clothes without asking, had dyed her hair the same color, and started using the same Instagram filters. The message said Chloe kept calling them twins, but it felt creepy and wrong. I could see the pattern speeding up, probably because Chloe was desperate to rebuild her perfect image after losing everything in Austin. 3 days later, my phone rang at 2 a.m. and Mrs. Healer's name appeared on the screen. She was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her words at first. Chloe had been arrested in Dallas for credit card fraud after stealing her new roommate's information to buy $8,000 worth of designer clothes. Mrs. Healer kept repeating that she didn't know how to help her daughter anymore, then said something that made my blood run cold. She thought her daughter might be a sociopath, the word hanging between us like a confession she'd been holding back for years. The arrest made the local Dallas news the next morning with Chloe's mugshot plastered across the screen. Her eyes looked completely dead in the photo, no trace of the charming friend who used to make everyone laugh. The news article's comment section exploded with other people sharing their own stories about her. Former coworkers, old roommates, people from college, all describing the same manipulative patterns. Without Instagram filters and perfect lighting, she couldn't hide what she really was anymore. Watching Mrs. Healer's Facebook posts about visiting her daughter in jail broke something in me. This woman had lost her child to a personality disorder, watching her become a stranger who hurt everyone she touched. My mom called after seeing the news coverage, telling me how glad she was that I got away when I did. I agreed, but it felt more complicated than that, like surviving a car crash but still feeling the impact forever. 8 months after the birthday brunch, the support group surprised me with a Freedom anniversary party at Emma's apartment. She'd made a cake with blue frosting that said Survivor across the top, reclaiming the color from that dress. Everyone shared stories about their own toxic friendship anniversaries, while we ate too much cake and laughed about things that used to make us cry. It felt like both yesterday and a lifetime ago that I'd worn that blue dress to brunch. The Dallas roommate who Chloe stole from joined our Facebook Survivor group the following week with screenshots of their text conversations. Dallas really said, "New city, who dis?" But Chloe packed her whole playbook of manipulation in the moving truck. Credit card fraud is definitely taking borrowing your friend's style to criminal levels. Her story matched ours beat for beat, but compressed into just 2 months instead of years. Ashley pointed out that Chloe was getting sloppy because she was desperate, moving through her abuse cycle faster and making bigger mistakes. We helped the roommate file police reports and connected her with the detective handling the fraud case. Then a local Austin journalist found the viral TikTok about the blue dress incident and started connecting dots between all of Chloe's victims. She reached out wanting interviews for a story about toxic friendships and pattern abuse. My lawyer said to be careful, but Emma decided to go on record with her full name and story. 3 days later, the article went live with the headline, "The Toxic Friend Next Door, A Pattern of Abuse," and included details from 5 different victims. 9 months after that crazy brunch, I was sitting at my desk when my phone buzzed with an email from a law firm. Chloe's lawyer wanted to meet about making a deal where if we stopped talking about what happened, she'd promise to stay away forever. I forwarded it to my lawyer, who actually laughed out loud when she called me back. She reminded me that Chloe was facing fraud charges, plus she'd violated 3 different restraining orders already, so she had zero leverage to negotiate anything. I realized while we were talking that I hadn't even thought about checking Chloe's social media in over 2 weeks, which was huge for me since I used to check it every single day. Maya noticed it too when we were at lunch, and someone mentioned Chloe's name, and I didn't even flinch or tense up like I used to. The weird part was the dreams I kept having about her. Not scary ones, but just normal dreams where we were friends again, eating brunch and laughing like nothing bad ever happened. I'd wake up confused and sad about losing a friendship that never really existed in the first place. My therapist said this was totally normal and part of processing the grief of losing what I thought the friendship was. Then the court date for the fraud trial got scheduled, and Emma said she was ready to testify about everything Chloe did with the money and fake documents. Part of me felt satisfied that she was finally facing consequences, but another part felt sad watching someone I once loved destroy their whole life. Sophie kept reminding me that every single choice was Chloe's, and she did this to herself. 2 weeks later, Chloe posted bail and immediately started creating fake Instagram accounts to message witnesses and tell them not to testify. The police arrested her again within 3 days, and this time her lawyer actually withdrew from the case, saying she was impossible to work with. Even her parents stopped posting bail after that, which showed how bad things had gotten. Around that same time, I got promoted to senior analyst at work, a position I never would have gone for when Chloe was in my life telling me I wasn't ready and would embarrass myself if I tried. My boss pulled me aside and said my confidence had completely transformed over the past few months, and I was finally showing my real potential. Dating started getting easier too once I stopped hearing Chloe's voice in my head criticizing every guy I met. I went on a date with this guy from my gym who actually celebrated when I told him about my promotion, instead of making it about himself. When I told him the whole Chloe story, he just said she sounded jealous of me, which was was such a simple truth I couldn't see before. The support group we started had grown to 30 women across Texas who'd all dealt with similar toxic friendships, and we met every week to share stories and resources. We helped each other recognize red flags and celebrate milestones like going a month without checking our toxic friends' social media or setting boundaries with new friends. Out of all the destruction Chloe caused, something really beautiful grew from women supporting each other through healing. Mrs. Healer asked if she could join our group, and with everyone's blessing, she started coming to meetings. She shared what it was like as a parent watching your kid hurt people and not knowing how to stop it, the guilt of maybe enabling it by always bailing her out. Other parents started reaching out to her after that, and she became this advocate for early intervention when kids show signs of personality disorders. Then 11 months after the brunch, Chloe's trial finally started. She decided to represent herself, which was absolutely wild, and claimed we were all part of some conspiracy against her because we were jealous of her success. The prosecutor presented evidence from 7 different victims, including bank records, fake documents, and screenshots of her harassment. Her whole defense was basically that we were all lying because we couldn't handle how amazing her life was compared to ours. The jury took less than 2 hours to deliberate, which the prosecutor said was really fast for a fraud case. When they read the verdict, my hands were shaking so bad I couldn't even hold my phone steady to text the group chat. Guilty on all 7 counts of fraud, 2 counts of identity theft, 3 counts of harassment, and 1 count of extortion. The judge gave her 18 months in minimum security, plus mandatory psychiatric treatment, and 5 years probation with a no-contact order for all of us. Chloe stood up so fast her chair fell over and started screaming that we were all jealous liars, and she'd appeal and her dad would sue everyone. But the bailiffs were already moving toward her. Her mom was crying in the back row while her dad kept shaking his head and wouldn't even look at her as they led her out in handcuffs, still yelling about how we'd ruined her life. My chest felt hollow watching her go. Not happy or sad, just empty, like when you finally throw out something broken you'd been keeping for too long. Maya organized what she called a justice brunch 2 weeks later at the same restaurant where everything started and made us all wear our blue dresses again, but this time it felt different, like we'd taken the dress back from being part of that awful memory. The restaurant staff recognized us, and the manager comped our mimosas and said she'd heard what happened and was proud of us for standing up to her. After that, everything got weirdly quiet with no crisis texts to answer or emergency therapy sessions or lawyer meetings or police statements to give. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. expecting my phone to be blowing up with some new drama, but it was just silent and dark and peaceful, which somehow felt wrong after months of chaos. My therapist said this was normal, that I'd gotten so used to living in crisis mode that calm felt threatening, like waiting for the other shoe to drop. I started going to the gym again and reading books and watching shows without constantly checking my phone for disaster updates. The survivor support group kept meeting every week, and we started planning something bigger, a whole conference about recognizing and recovering from female narcissistic abuse, since nobody really talks about how women can be predators too. Almost a year after the original brunch, Emma suggested we do it on the anniversary as a way to reclaim that date and turn it into something positive. Ashley had connections at the university and got us a lecture hall for free while I worked on finding speakers and setting up registration. We called it When She's the Villain, and within 2 weeks we had over 100 people signed up. That's when this documentary filmmaker reached out through the conference email saying she'd been following our story online and wanted to film everything for a project about female friendship abuse. She sent examples of her other work about domestic violence and workplace harassment, and it was really good, not exploitative or sensationalized, just honest storytelling. The group voted and everyone agreed we should do it because maybe our story could help other people recognize the signs before it got as bad as ours did. Going through all the evidence again for the documentary was different this time because I could see the patterns so clearly, how she'd isolated each of us and made us dependent on her approval and turned us against each other. The filmmaker had us lay out all the screenshots and recordings and photos in chronological order, and it looked exactly like what my therapist called a predator's playbook. Not some friendship that went wrong, but deliberate manipulation from day one. I didn't cry once during the filming, even when we got to the worst parts, because I finally understood it was never about me being not good enough. It was about her needing to break people down to feel powerful. My therapy sessions had been twice a week for almost a year, but my therapist said I was ready to go down to once a month because I'd finally stopped hearing Chloe's voice in my head, criticizing everything I did. Instead of automatically thinking I was too fat or too boring or too whatever, I'd started actually trusting my own judgment about myself and making decisions without worrying what she would have said. The conference ended up being way bigger than we expected, with 200 people showing up and local news covering it, and women coming up to us all day with their own stories about toxic friends who'd destroyed their self-esteem. One woman drove 3 hours just to thank us for speaking up because she'd been in an abusive friendship for 10 years, and our story gave her the courage to finally cut contact. About 13 months after everything started, my lawyer forwarded me a letter from Chloe's lawyer saying she wanted to apologize and had made real breakthroughs in therapy and understood how much she'd hurt us. My lawyer and therapist both said not to respond because narcissists use apologies as ways to pull you back in and test whether they still have power over you. I threw the letter away without reading past the first line and didn't even tell the others about it because we'd all moved on and didn't need her fake remorse. Chloe's lawyer literally laughed at that plea deal. That's like trying to trade Monopoly money for real cash after you've been caught printing it in your basement. The math just doesn't work when you've broken that many laws. The documentary came out 6 months later on Netflix, and within the first week it had 3 million views and was trending in 12 countries. My inbox exploded with messages from survivors all over the world sharing their stories, and therapists asking if they could use it in their practice, and parents saying it helped them recognize warning signs in their kids' friendships. 3 weeks later, I was checking emails when I saw one from the California Department of Corrections with a subject line about Chloe. My hands shook opening it because because the prison therapist had reached out through proper legal channels, saying Chloe had been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder with antisocial features during her mandatory psych evaluation. Reading the clinical terms felt weird because there was finally a name for what she was, but the therapist's note at the bottom hit harder, saying, "There's no real cure for this, and she'll probably always be this way." I printed it out and filed it with all the other documents from the case, then closed my laptop and sat there for a while just processing that some people are just broken. 2 months after that, I was backstage at the Social Impact Documentary Awards adjusting my mic pack when Emma grabbed my hand and Ashley fixed my hair one last time before we walked out together. The announcer called our documentary's name and suddenly, I was standing at the podium, looking out at hundreds of people, while Emma held the award and Ashley squeezed my shoulder, and I realized we'd turned all that pain into something that actually helped people. The trophy was heavy in my hands when we posed for photos afterward, and reporters kept asking how it felt to transform trauma into purpose. But all I could think was how Chloe tried to destroy us, but made us stronger instead. Universities started calling after that, wanting me to speak about recognizing toxic friendships. So I started traveling to campuses every few weeks, standing in lecture halls full of young women who'd lean forward when I described the warning signs. After each talk, girls would come up with tears in their eyes saying they had their own Chloes, and asking how to get out, and every time I helped one, it felt like taking back a piece of the power she stole from me. My voice stopped shaking after the 10th speech, and by the 20th, I could tell the story without my heart racing. Then one morning, I found a letter from Mrs. Healer in my mailbox with Texas postmark, and my stomach dropped, but I opened it anyway. She wrote that Chloe would be released in 6 months, but the court ordered her to stay in California for 5 years of probation so she wouldn't be coming back to Texas. And then she wrote something that made me cry, saying she loved her daughter but couldn't enable her anymore, and thanking me for showing her the truth. I kept that letter in my desk drawer and looked at it sometimes when I doubted whether speaking up had been worth it. Time kept moving, and 18 months after the brunch, my life had found its rhythm with weekly dinners with Sophie and Maya and Jess at our favorite Thai place, and monthly support group meetings at the community center, and quarterly speaking engagements at conferences. The blue dress hung in my closet behind my work clothes, and sometimes I'd see it when I was getting ready, but it was just fabric now, not some symbol of everything that happened. I met someone at a bookstore 6 months ago when we both reached for the same memoir, and he already knew my story because he'd seen the documentary, but he asked me out anyway. On our third date, when I apologized for taking too long to order, he touched my hand gently and said that was Chloe's voice, not mine, and I needed to learn the difference. He was right, and I started catching myself more often recognizing when I was repeating her criticisms versus my own thoughts. The survivor support group kept growing, and soon we had chapters in 12 cities with volunteer coordinators running local meetings, and the Facebook group hit 5,000 members, all sharing their stories and helping each other heal. What started as 6 girls in blue dresses had become this whole movement of people refusing to accept emotional abuse from people who claim to love them. Messages came in every day, but one morning I got one that made me stop everything to read it 3 times. A girl in Ohio wrote that her best friend had been treating her exactly like Chloe treated me, making her feel small and wrong and broken, but she recognized the pattern from the documentary and got out before it destroyed her, saying I saved her years of abuse. Those messages made all the hate mail and threats during the trial worth it, because even if I just helped one person recognize the signs, it mattered. 2 years after the brunch came around quietly without fanfare or drama, just dinner at Maya's apartment with Sophie and Jess, and good wine and Thai takeout. We raised our glasses, and Maya said we should toast to recognizing our worth, and we all clinked glasses, and I realized these were my real friends, the ones who showed up and stayed. Last week, I was at the mall looking for a dress for my cousin's wedding, going through racks of pastels, when I saw it hanging there like a ghost from the past. A blue midi dress with a cutout back almost exactly like the one that started everything, and my first instinct was to walk away, but something made me take it off the rack. The dressing room mirror showed me standing there in that blue dress, but this time I saw what I actually looked like, not what Chloe trained me to see. I looked beautiful because I always had been beautiful, even when she convinced me otherwise, and her voice that used to live in my head telling me I was too much or not enough was completely gone. Standing there, I heard my own voice for the first time in years saying, "You look perfect exactly as you are," and meaning it. I bought the dress. Alright, time to wrap this one up. Appreciate